That phrase, the darkest corner of the heart,
Hmm.
um, it just grabs you, doesn't it?
It really does.
There's a kind of weight to it,
Yeah.
a hint of something
Yeah.
profound, something maybe we often keep hidden.
Mm.
And it's just fascinating how it seems to pop up in, well, the most unexpected corners of our lives, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That inherent mystery, I think, that's probably why it resonates so much across different kinds of expression.
Yeah.
It taps into this fundamental understanding that our deepest emotions, especially the really intense ones, can have aspects we keep private. Maybe even from ourselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the darkest corner of the heart, we're often getting at those feelings or experiences we find, difficult to confront or acknowledge or even just share.
The hidden bits.
Exactly. The hidden aspects of our inner lives could be painful, complex, or sometimes just private.
Right. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've gathered a really intriguing mix of sources, all kind of touched by this idea of the darkest corner of the heart.
Yeah.
We're taking a look at its many lives on TikTok, exploring a pretty passionate Reddit discussion around Taylor Swift's Lover album.
Ah, okay.
Briefly, considering, the ever-present Facebook login page.
Interesting inclusion.
And delving into a thoughtful Substack post about modern love stories.
That's a truly diverse collection. Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, hopefully.
This central thread obviously is this very evocative phrase and how it links to our inner emotional world.
Mm-hmm.
Our aim here, I suppose, is to explore how this phrase is actually used in these different contexts, what sort of subtle meanings it carries.
Yeah, what's behind
And
it.
ultimately, what it might reveal about, the complexities of human emotion and how we connect with each other.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with TikTok. Wow. This was a real rabbit hole.
I can imagine.
There's this one compilation of videos, staggering, 8.5 million views, all centered around darkest corner of the heart.
8.5 million. Wow.
Yeah. And the sheer variety of content under that umbrella is just remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. TikTok, as it's a platform where trends and specific phrases can just explode incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
That number of views, it really suggests a significant level of interest or maybe relatability with this particular idea.
Definitely relatability.
What do you think it is about this specific phrase that lets it be interpreted in so many ways? Is it the darkest part or is it the heart symbol?
That's a great question. I think maybe both. It almost feels like the phrase acts as a kind of emotional shorthand,
Like a shortcut.
Yeah. A lot of the TikToks, it turns out, are actually connected to a romance novel, also titled The Darkest Corner of the Heart
Okay. Makes sense.
by Lucina Coney. And we saw everything from, promotional snippets mentioning the tropes, age gap, forbidden romance, ballerina, physical
A
therapist.
classic romance ingredient.
Right, it's coming out February 20th, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But then also loads of really enthusiastic reader reactions, people using hashtags like hashtag book talk, hashtag book it,
Standard hashtag book talk stuff, yeah.
hashtag Kindle Unlimited, hashtag romance books. People were clearly connecting with something in that title or the story itself.
Well, the hashtag book talk community is certainly a powerful driver of interest, isn't it?
Huge.
Those hashtags, they don't just show genre preferences, they point to that shared space for readers to find and talk about books that really hit them emotionally.
Exactly.
But, while hashtag book talk has grabbed onto the phrase through this novel, it's interesting, isn't it, that many of the other TikTok uses seem to be drawing on something older, like a pre-existing cultural understanding of the phrase separate from the book.
Totally.
Yeah.
We even saw readers highlighting specific tropes they loved from the book, like one saying FMC calling him immediately ice sand, like running instantly.
Right. Intense devotion.
Yeah, I guess that speaks to that theme. But, it wasn't all just praise. There were definitely some mixed reviews in there, too.
As you'd expect.
Which is normal. And it's fascinating to see the international reach to mentions in Italian Turkish. And shout-outs to the author at Lucina Coney and the publisher at Queen Edizioni.
It's a potent reminder, isn't it, how fast content and the discussions around books or movies can just cross borders online now.
Instantly.
The different languages suggest there might be a kind of universal appeal in the themes the book's exploring, captured by that central phrase.
Yeah, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Beyond the book stuff.
Okay.
The phrase just pops up in completely unrelated contexts on TikTok, like multiple references to a song by the band Ghost.
Oh, Ghost. Yeah, I know them.
Darkness, at the heart of my love.
Yeah.
And these videos had serious engagement, lots of likes,
Yeah.
shares,
Mm-hmm.
showing the phrase really resonates in a musical context too, deeply.
Well, using a phrase like that in lyrics, it often taps into existing emotional connections listeners already have with the music, doesn't it?
Totally.
Ghost has a very dedicated following, and that lyric clearly strikes a chord. Makes you wonder what specific emotions or themes in that song connect with that phrase for so many people.
Exactly.
Mm.
And then you get these really personal, almost poetic glimpses. Someone shared a quote about a father's smile lighting up a child's heart.
Oh, that's
A
lovely.
really beautiful contrast to the darkest corner.
Yeah, the light and dark.
We saw just general expressions of sadness or inner turmoil, even some sort of profound poetry and philosophical thoughts on inner darkness.
Mm.
It really covered such a wide spectrum of emotions. It's fascinating how this phrase can be like a blank canvas.
Yeah.
People project their most intense, often unspoken feelings onto it, whether it's about fictional characters or their own struggles or even spiritual beliefs.
It suggests a universal human experience, doesn't it, of having these hidden emotional landscapes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Darkness in this context can mean so many things, from just fleeting sadness to like deeper existential stuff.
And it got even more diverse.
Right.
There were mentions relating to mental health, overthinking, depression.
Which makes sense, unfortunately, that feeling of a dark space within.
Yeah. Then a surprising turn to spiritual or religious interpretations. We saw Islamic tick connecting it to Nur, or divine light, reaching the heart.
Oh, interesting. So seeing the phrase, which is often linked to negativity, also connect with ideas of inner light or hope.
Exactly. What does that tell us?
Well, that spiritual angle adds another layer, doesn't it? It suggests that even within the darkest parts of ourselves, there's potential for, illumination or positive change through faith or looking inward.
Yeah. We even saw it tied to homesickness, childhood memories, that kind of yearning for a past that maybe feels brighter than the present.
Nostalgia's shadow.
And then completely out of left field, a mention of an exorcism in 1954.
Wow. Okay. Talk about literal darkness.
Right.
That reference, I mean, it's thematically linked to darkness and the unknown, sure, but it's a pretty stark example, a bit jarring compared to the more internal emotional uses.
Totally different vibe.
It really highlights the power of that word darkest to evoke a sense of the extreme or the unknown.
And then it swung right back to personal connection, twin flame discussions, soulmates, heart chakra healing.
Spiritual seeking again.
Someone even shared a quote attributed to Bobby. "In your eyes is hidden such a light that ignites the darkness of my heart."
Which sounds almost like a direct response to the original phrase itself, doesn't it? Like an answer.
It does. And there was a line from the video game Baldur's Gate 3, "Embrace loss."
That carries a similar weight, acknowledging difficult emotions.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of those romantic or spiritual ideas like twin flames with something more grounded like accepting loss. It just shows the breadth of feeling the phrase can cover.
It really does.
And just to bring it kind of full circle, there was even a clip showing like the anatomy of a beating heart.
Oh, the literal versus the metaphorical.
Exactly, a stark reminder of the physical organ versus this metaphorical darkest corner. And a beautiful poem about the memory of a loved one being a light in that darkness.
That's poignant.
Finally, a comment directly linking it back to Taylor Swift. Someone wrote, "In your eyes is hidden such a light that ignites the darkness of my heart," on a Taylor-related TikTok.
That comment is a perfect little bridge to our next source, actually.
Right.
And it just reinforces how the phrase or the ideas behind it can be deeply personal, but also find resonance within these big cultural touchstones like music and literature.
So the key takeaway from TikTok, it seems, is this.
Right.
Darkest corner of the heart is a remarkably adaptable phrase, super flexible. It's used in so many different ways, often pointing to really intense emotions, especially in romance.
Right, the romantic angle was strong.
But also touching on personal struggles, grief, even those spiritual ideas we saw. And yeah, the hashtag BookTok community has really embraced it through that specific novel.
Precisely. It's a fascinating snapshot, isn't it? How one evocative phrase can become a focal point for such a wide range of human experiences and creative expressions in that kind of dynamic online space.
Definitely. Okay, now let's shift gears a bit. Over to Reddit and the Four Corners lover discussion on the Taylor Swift subreddit.
Okay, the Swifties.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, this Four Corners game is where fans basically categorize songs from an album best, overrated, underrated, and worst.
All very subjective, of course. Lots of debate.
Oh yeah, very opinion-based.
Yeah.
But having seen how this phrase takes on so many personal meanings on TikTok, it's interesting to look at how the concept of the heart and deep emotion gets discussed within a community focused on one artist, even if they're not using that specific phrase.
It's a really insightful way to gauge the collective feeling, isn't it? And the diverse interpretations around a specific album by an artist like Taylor Swift, who has such a dedicated fan base.
Yeah. What I found interesting is how the idea of the heart just comes up again and again. You've got song titles like Miss Americana and The Heartbreak Prince. And just in the general discussion, even though, like I said, the exact phrase darkest corner isn't there, fans talk a lot about which songs hit them hard emotionally, which ones touch on vulnerability.
Right.
One commenter actually said, "The heart is what makes me such a fan of her work."
That sums it up nicely.
Yeah. And they mentioned Cornelia Street and The Archer as examples of her being vulnerable.
Both good examples.
Yeah.
It shows that even without using that specific phrase, the underlying theme is still central, right? The deeply felt emotions, the heart as the symbol for all that.
Yeah.
That's key to how fans connect with her music.
Totally. It highlights how deeply her listeners connect with the emotional core of her songwriting.
Definitely.
Exactly. And you really see the range of opinions. I mean, fans passionately debate the emotional impact, the lyrical quality of different songs.
Oh, I bet. Fierce debates.
It just shows how differently people connect with the exact same music. Someone's overrated is another person's absolute best.
Absolutely. Which connects directly back to what you find interesting, right? Those multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Even within a focused discussion, like one album, the ways individual songs hit people emotionally, it just varies so much. What one person finds deeply moving, another might just,
Right.
yeah.
Totally different reactions. Okay, a quick but I think important stop. The Facebook login page.
Okay. The login page.
Now, on the surface, this doesn't exactly scream darkest corner of the heart, does it?
Not immediately, no. It's pretty functional, ubiquitous but functional.
Yeah. Moving from those really expressive platforms like TikTok and Reddit, it's interesting to just consider a space like Facebook. It facilitates countless emotional connections every single day.
True. Billions of them, probably.
But it doesn't explicitly engage with this kind of intense metaphorical language, at least not on its surface.
Right.
But I included it because it represents this massive online space where people connect, share their lives, and that implicitly includes matters of the heart, right? Relationships, joys, sorrows.
Sure. The content shared on Facebook is full of that.
Even if the specific intense phrasing isn't there on the login screen itself.
So the takeaway here is more about the contrast.
I think so, yeah.
While platforms like Facebook are the venue for countless personal and emotional connections, the specific evocative language of the darkest corner of the heart isn't really part of the platform's basic machinery. It highlights that this kind of intense phrasing is more likely to pop up in, say, creative contexts or expressive ones where exploring deeper emotions is the actual point.
Right. It's maybe where those connections start or are maintained, but not necessarily where the deepest, most complex stuff is articulated using this kind of language.
Makes sense.
Okay, now let's turn to our final source. This Substack post, No Ordinary Love, by Jackie Jantis.
Okay, Substack. More curated narratives here.
Yeah, this was about an anthology of love stories that actually started out on the dating app Hinge.
Oh, interesting origin.
And it involved some really interesting writers, like Roxane Gay was involved.
Ah, okay. High profile.
What caught my eye, though, was a comment left by someone called For Love of Writers. They linked to an article they'd written about how ghosts of memories, friends, and lovers lurk in the dark corners of my mind when dealing with heartbreak.
Wow, that's a really direct echo of our phrase, isn't it? Dark corners of my mind instead of heart, but the same core idea.
Exactly. That felt like a really clear connection.
And it's significant. It shows how easily that darkest corners metaphor applies to the lingering pain, the unresolved feelings that often come with the end of a relationship.
Yeah.
Memories, in that sense, they can become like these shadows hiding in the hidden spaces of our minds or hearts.
And there was also a mention just briefly of another post titled CEO's Darkest Secret, which maybe suggests this recurring theme of darkest emotions or hidden aspects cropping up in romantic narratives, even if it's just used to create a bit of intrigue in a title.
Yeah, the title itself hints at that idea, doesn't it? That even people who seem powerful or successful on the outside can have hidden vulnerabilities or complex emotional lives. It connects back to that same idea of the darkest corner.
Yeah. So the connection here, thinking about you, the listener, and your interest in gaining knowledge about emotions and relationships, it feels pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
The darkest corners in these Substack contexts really seem to represent those unresolved feelings, maybe difficult memories, or even hidden parts of ourselves that come into play within our connections with others.
Precisely. These darker or maybe just more private aspects of our emotional lives,
Hmm.
they inevitably influence how we navigate love, loss, and that whole intricate web of human relationships.
Definitely. So as we kind of bring this deep dive to a close, a few key insights seem to emerge, I think.
Okay.
The phrase darkest corner of the heart, it's clearly a really powerful metaphor, and it resonates across a surprising range of media.
It really does.
It seems primarily used to describe those hidden, maybe painful or just intensely personal emotions we carry around inside us.
And as we've seen, its usage is incredibly varied, from being like a central marketing tool for a romance novel
Right, the book.
to individuals just expressing their deepest feelings of sadness or love, or even that spiritual longing in these very brief online posts.
Yeah. Which makes you wonder, if you're listening, consider what aspects of your own heart might have those dark corners.
Hmm.
And maybe, just maybe, exploring those hidden places like we've seen hinted at in all these different contexts. Maybe that could actually lead to a better understanding of yourself.
Or even more empathy, perhaps, for what other people might be going through.
Exactly. It's kind of a sobering reminder, isn't it, how many people seem to connect with that feeling of inner darkness in their everyday lives based on how often this phrase comes up.
That's a crucial point. Acknowledging these hidden spaces within ourselves and in others, it can be a pathway, can it, to greater self-awareness and maybe a more nuanced understanding of the whole human condition?
Yeah, and it leaves you with this final thought, I guess. In a world where just so much is shared online all the time,
Mm-hmm. Everything's out there.
what truly remains hidden away in the darkest corners of our hearts? And maybe more importantly, what might be the real value in acknowledging and perhaps even trying to understand those hidden spaces?
Something to really think about.